All right, everyone, welcome back into another fantasy golf video. Gonna be touching on the top plays for the Sony Open, giving you guys the best Draftkings plays, touching on a few of my favorite outright bets, but overall just giving you guys the preview of this week in DFS in fantasy golf. But first, I do want to do a quick recap of the Century Tournament because, man, it was a pretty easy week, but also strange stuff ownership-wise. So first and foremost, this is a screenshot from the 9 to 5 database. A lot of data goes into it, right? So this is why I curated for you guys, because it's a little sloppy when I show it like this, when I present it like this. What I want to show you guys is going to be this part right here, the GPP winners. So looking at right now, guys, based off the sample build that I put out to you guys, and I'll show you guys right now, the cash min was 671, very kind of high for a no-cut event, but you'll see that the sample build that I gave you guys, the plays that I told you guys to be on, helped you with a profitable week. So we had Sky Scheffler as a play that we're going out of our way to make, as well as Collin Morikawa. Those two plays were chalk. Scotty was not nearly as chalky as he should be. He was only like 37% owned with a no-cut event. I thought everyone knew the strategy. Thankfully, they don't. We're going to keep taking advantage of that. Strategy is to go studs and duds. And so the GPP winning lineup proves that. And so 3 of the players that I told you guys to be on kind of as a first look build, Akshay, Scotty, and Collin Morikawa, they came through and they had a good week. So real quickly, here is one of the builds I put out there. I don't know if this was the sample build or not. This is the one that I ended up on. Luke List was another play that I was kind of surprised on his ownership as well. I thought it was pretty low. It was about 17%, which to me, he was kind of like the clear-cut value play. And again, he was someone that we could count on to at least outproduce his price tag, which was the whole point of doing a studs and duds build on a no-cut event, because we are locking in 130 points out of Sky Scheffler, 130 out of Collin Morikawa, 2 of the easy plays on the slate. The public agreed with that. And the way you are able to do that is by going with Luke List, or Akshay as well, which obviously ended up being a pretty good week. Now, I will say Chris Kirk winning was pretty random. But another thing that I do want to point out is just the ownership in general. Like, again, I said Collin Morikawa, that was a simple play. Sky Scheffler, that was a simple play. Eric Cole, I didn't think it was actually going to be as chalky as he was, because he was at kind of that weird kind of dead price point range. He did end up being chalk. Looking back on it, that was probably a mistake to play him being that high owned. But the weird ones, like Ludwig being that high owned, was a little bit of a head scratcher to me, again, given the nature of the event that we had. But really the biggest one, especially because he was popping up on the data sheet as a really bad ownership leverage play, again, from the 9 to 5 ownership leverage tool, he was popping up as the second worst play on the slate, pretty much. He was the 5th highest owned player by a decent amount. That was a little bit of a head scratcher. Again, if we're going to do a studs and duds build, just do a studs and duds. Like, it's a guessing game for the most part as to which plays are going to outproduce the price tag down that low. Now, yes, you can end up on Luke List and whatnot, but the freaking winner, Chris Kirk, was like 2% owned. So like, there is a big edge that you can gain in its no-cut events, and hopefully maybe at the start of the season people aren't as tuned in as they typically are. But guys, that is enough of last week's review video. Let's go ahead and get into the preview portion. So going into the 9 to 5 cheat sheet here. Now, getting into the course preview, guys, weather is really the biggest thing that could make a difference, kind of like last week's tournament where it wasn't that crazy weather-wise, and so it was kind of an easier tournament. That's what we're expecting for this week as well. Weather is not looking like it's going to play a factor. A little bit of potential wind Friday, 60-mile-per-hour winds. Typically, that's not too crazy. It is a par 70 course and a kind of shorter track at 7,000 yards. So really, when we're looking at the key stats, it's not surprising some of the key stats that we're looking at as like the top plays, staff-wise and whatnot. So some of the key stats are going to be strokes gained putting. This is one of the very rare tournaments in which strokes gained putting actually really dictates who's going to win the tournament in terms of like predictability. And so that's definitely a key stat we want to be looking at. But also par 4 scoring is another like secondary stat we can be looking at. And then the 200 plus stat as well is basically like the long iron stat. Those are 2 other stats that typically don't pop up each and every week, but they are popping up this week. Again, mostly because it's a par 70 course. Total driving, ball striking, they're going to be 2 stats that we're looking at. And then birdie to bogey ratio as well. Those are going to be 2 stats that we're looking at. And then we'll get into that a little bit more as the video progresses. But looking at the golfers that had the best course history, well, Hideki is going to be one of those golfers. It's kind of been mixed results. So 48th place finish last year at this tournament. Also hasn't been playing that good of golf. You got Brian Palmer in there, 4 straight events at this tournament. All top, all made cuts, all not terrible finishes. The biggest constraint against this week, guys, is that it was the same one as last week, where a lot of these golfers just haven't played that many competitive rounds over the past month, 2 months, 3 months, some cases 4 months. And now with this event specifically, it's typically not as good of a field. And so there is a lot more random high variance to it. When Matt Kuchar won this tournament, that was one of my better DFS weeks, PGA wise, really throughout the whole season that year. Last year, I think I had a major cut sweat going. I think it was Webb Simpson on it. And now he's all the way down to 6.8. That's crazy. Webb Simpson kind of was really good at this tournament for quite some time. Has definitely fallen off, but he is still popping in as someone that has good course history. Cameron Davis, maybe he's in for a bounce back spot. Chris Kirk, pretty good course history, -1 missed cut here. And that's the thing that we're going to see here, guys, is that basically no one is going to be an ideal play when just looking at course history. A lot of these guys are not going to have that many great finishes, or the golfers that do have great finishes like Hideki, they're not going to be in good form. Or like in Russell Henley, as an example, at least 1 missed cut over the past 4 years. Now, personally, I don't really care about a missed cut 4 years ago when they have had 3 straight pretty good starts. So like a 32nd, 2nd, and 11th for Russell Henley. That is something I'm perfectly fine with. I'm very happy to roster that. But again, like going to the consistency point here, Keegan Bradley, miscut 12th, miscut 12th. So there is something to that. Now, guys, this is going to be a little bit of a small sample size, but when looking at the specialist data, what I just want to take a peek at is actually going to be the golfers that played the best on those seaside style courses. So I'm just looking at style of course. And so, yes, a little bit of a small sample size in there with Sam Stevens, with Taylor Montgomery, but we are getting a good sense of the players that pop on these type of courses. Obviously, Tagala had a pretty good week last week. That's probably vault him up a decent amount, as well as Akshay there, but we get a pretty good sense of the plays that we potentially want to be in. And so I do think that's probably the most interesting specialist data point to be looking at. But with that, guys, let's just go and get into the top plays for the Sony Open. So now just jumping into the top picks for the Sony Open, we're going to see that Ludwig might be a little bit overpriced on this slate. For those of you that are not familiar with the 9-to-5 model, what the purpose of the model rank here is, we are both measuring both safety and upside. How we do that is by looking at various data points that matter in fantasy golf. Over 7 years in the making here, we kind of got to figure it out, right? Looking at course history over the past 4 years, looking at the key stat data, not going too far off into the blue. A lot of people, that's probably the biggest issue that they have with data sets, pulling in stats that don't matter too much. No, we're dialing in. These were the key stats. Look at those. And then looking at the recent form, typically looking at the last 7 starts. I have the last 4 starts highlighted here for you guys, and then the cut. And so we don't have a full sample size for Ludwig too much just yet. Last week was an alarming week. Again, we don't know how these golfers are going to respond coming in off of not playing competitively for quite some time. There's a risk associated with all these plays. And so with him being that high price and not being all too safe, I would say I'd much rather go Hatton. We're going to see Corey Connors there. Tagala I would be fine with, Brian Harman I'd be fine with, and even Matt Fitzpatrick I'd be fine with. And even Eric Cole continued his really good golf that he'd been playing. He had to make cut at this tournament last year. And just as an FY, going back into the data set, one thing that I have added in there this year, I've been hesitant to do it, but I think Vegas has gotten pretty good now. What I'm looking at now included in that is going to be looking at the made cut percent from Vegas, the live updates on that. So that's going to be updating up until lineup lock, and then also who they view is the most likely to win. Again, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, there was a huge edge outright betting wise. Vegas has gotten much better recently, so that was something where I've been toying around with adding in there. I went ahead and added it in there. So that is where maybe stuff might not be matching up the same way it was last year. Might be a little bit different this year. But looking at it, guys, like to me, I do think Terrell Hatton's going to be a starting point. I don't really care about the 5 out of 6 cuts that they're showing, that DraftKings is showing. I think that that's a little bit misleading on their part, but the 14th place finish at the Century was actually a very good finish for him. And Hatton is the play this week that really just pops up data wise across the board. So like looking at guys, doesn't have any course history. That is definitely a concern. Like I do think we want to be prioritizing course history as like a 50-50 decision maker. But 5th in recent form, best staff in the field, top play in the 95 mile, 4th best specialist, key stat wise, really popping up in all of the key stats there. The lowest one being total driving, but all in all, he's looking like one of the best plays we can make this week. But yeah, my question is, do we want to prioritize him over some of these golfers that have courses, over some like Tagala that has been playing pretty darn well, over Brian Harman, who also has been playing pretty darn well and has made 4 straight cuts here, or Corey Connors, who has made 3 straight cuts here, who also has been playing pretty well? To me, that's where I want to be looking at. And really, you could argue Brian Harman, Corey Connors, even Eric Cole, but also Russell Henley. Those are going to be the plays that I'm prioritizing, but I think I'm really going to be looking at Corey Connors and Brian Harman. I think those 2 plays give us a lot of safety really at their pricing as well. To be below 10K, I feel like that's pretty good. So I'm perfectly fine getting to Corey Connors. Feels like a safe play. Maybe not the best upside play, maybe not the best GPP play, but chances are he's going to make the cut. This is a tournament in which he succeeds in. And then Brian Harman as well. Again, not the most sexy play. A lot of people aren't going to want to roster him, but someone that played well in the fall, really loved the 5th place finish, continued his good golf, and also has good course history. That if those 2 plays fail me, I'm kind of okay with accepting it. Like we knew that was part of the risk. I do think Russell Henley is definitely a strong GPP play this week. And I say GPP is not going to be a cash play for you simply because last week he did not really show up. Does that really matter too much? No, I like the fact that he played last week. I do think anyone that played last week is going to have a one up on someone that didn't play. Then after that, let's jump down into the kind of mid-tier range, that below 8K range. But I guess first I do want to talk about JT Poston. JT Poston is someone that in the fall had a pretty good fall swing. And then last week, a pretty darn good finish at the Century. Again, I do think players that played last week are going to have a slight edge for me. And so he's someone that's not going to have the best course history, guys, you know, but it has been getting better. So reverse order, miscut, 42nd, 21st. So like that there from him. Key stat wise, really good putter. We know that. So probably has the ability to go out and win. It sounds weird saying that, like, oh, because he's a good putter this week, he has a chance to win. Typically, that may be why someone makes the cut, but typically speaking, it's not like why you're targeting this. It's just a weird thing to say. But all in all, looking like a good play, you know, really strong recent form. When we look at it, guys, we see the track record. I mean, multiple top 10 finishes over his past 10 starts. He was a very cheap price play for a lot of those starts as well. I'd be definitely more than okay than getting to him this week. My only concern with him as a play is he a cash play? Do we want to end up on him in cash? Probably not. Again, I think we want to be prioritizing Harman and Connors in cash and like a safety build. But from there, we also have some other players that are popping up. So Benny Ann is someone that is popping up as well. Played well at the Century, has good course history here. Now, it's only one start over the past 4 years, but he had 12th place finish at this event then. And we do see a lot of top 10s mixed in there over his past 9 events. A little bit too hit or miss, but we can see over his past 6 starts really has been playing quite better. My biggest concern with him is that the key stat data. Now, the key stat data, just like the recent form, just like everything else, is going back. If that's going back to last season right now, guys, I'm actually looking at the past 15 starts for these guys, which I don't love doing that, but it's the weird transitioning period between last season's data on the PGA Tour and this season's data on the PGA Tour. So that's why I'm looking at the last 15 starts. All in all, I think he's a very good play at his price. I will say I do think Cameron Davis is in for a great bounce back spot. I don't really care that he had the 53rd place finish. I'm really surprised at the model rank, actually. I think he's going to be someone that suits well this week. Obviously has really good course history. I'd be fine getting there. Denny McCarthy is someone that has good course history, 32nd, 48th. He's been playing pretty well lately. Harris English is a play that I think I can get behind, though. It seems like he has bounced back pretty well after, well, it really comes down to like 2 years ago having that career year, last year kind of having a down year. It makes sense. It feels like he's kind of settling back, though, into a groove. And this should be a course that fits his game. It might be a little bit too early to go in on it too much, but all in all, I do think he's going to be a fair play, and he's at a fair price tag. So all in all, I think we can end up there. Justin Rose really should be a good play this week, but really, again, guys, we got Stefan Jaeger there at a good price tag, and we also have Adam Hadwin that I think is also kind of a safe play this week as well. But with us paying up for a few studs, we're going to have to find some kind of lower price plays. So let's drop down to that low tier price tag, the 7K range. And so Brendan Todd is someone that is popping up to me as a play. Really strong course history, 4 straight make cuts at this event. Love to see that. The concern is going to be the key stat data, basically middle of the field in all of it, except for putting. Could be a little bit better there as well, but recent form, guys, he has been crushing. Again, all this stuff is taken with a grain of salt because for the most part, we haven't seen most of these players too much. So he's someone I think we can begin to as a play, but who is popping up here, guys? Adam Svensson. That is crazy. 11th best in the 95 mile right now. We can see why looking at the projection data. 16th best specialist, 19th best in course history rank, 41st and 7th place finish, 13th best staff in the field, and 6th best in recent form rank. I mean, it's no shock. I say it with hesitation because I kind of forgot about it up until last week, how well he had been playing. I mean, just a make cut machine. And so he's someone I think outright wise is going to make a lot of sense at 48-1 odds right now. And DFS wise, I think he's someone that we should just be looking and locking into our builds right now. And I'm very curious to see where his ownership comes up because sure, last week, was it a bad week? I mean, not really. He kind of did what you would expect him to do last week. Again, he was someone that played last week. I think he gets a slight one up on the competition for simply being here a week earlier. And I kind of like that as a play now. And so there's going to be 2 more plays that I want to get into. One of them is going to be Andrew Putnam, which as price tag 7.5, I feel like is a fair price tag. He's made 3 out of 4 cuts at this tournament, 4th place finish at this tournament last year. Now, if you guys recall, last year I was kind of hyping him up a bunch. Didn't get on him as much that's not true. I was on him a decent amount throughout the whole season, but all in all, I think he's going to be someone that does give us a pretty good chance at a made cut. Top 20 pick in the 95 model at 7.5. You know, that is something we can take. Is he a lock and load to make the cut? No, for sure. But is he at a cheap price tag that allows us to pay up for those studs that we're prioritizing? But there is a slightly better play that's kind of the same play. And that's going to be Nick Taylor, guys. And I think Nick Taylor does make for a pretty good outright bet this week as well. just because I feel like he's undervalued. So we're getting his odds at like 84-1 on average. We look at the course history, 7th, 11th, 32nd. Love that there. 3 straight make cuts from him, and they've been getting better each year. And that's something I do like to see. Recent form, pretty darn solid. The concern is going to be his stat fit. 53rd in the field. Like, that's not a make or break. We can see key stat data, nothing too concerning there. And if we're looking at all of his data points, like really 1 in the red, 1 bad start, 9 starts ago. And then the next one, I guess, is going to be his start 7 starts ago. So all in all, that's really not bad at all. And so I'm going to be putting Nick Taylor into the build again. He didn't play well last week. And I will say that at the Century, again, though, he did play last week. I think that is a big edge. Really just had 1 bad round in there. Round 3, shot 73. You take that away and give him like a normal round. Let's say he shot -3 there. -14, still not great, but still not terrible. You know, he's not someone you would typically want to target in a no-cut event where you're trying to search for birdie makers. This is going to be a tournament and a course that is much more suited for his style game. And so for this first look build, I don't want to close it out. You guys can kind of decide for yourself what to do. We got Andrew Putnam there. He's a fine play. We got Justin Suh there. I feel like he's a pretty stellar play as well. A bunch of other plays that are just popping up. And Alexander Bjork, I do think, is someone that is interesting. He's been someone that kind of bounces around on both tours, mostly been playing on the DP tour though. Be kind of interesting to see how he does this week. And we do have a lot of decent value plays. Maybe I'll get into that in a different video. This one's been getting a little bit long, so I'm going to go ahead and end it right there. But yes, thank you guys for watching. Let's have a good slate today. Make sure to give a like and subscribe to this channel. Again, trying to grow this channel as fast and as much as possible. Dedicated golf channel. I'm excited to get out to you guys. If you guys want access to the 9to5 Sports Fantasy Golf Tools, head on over to 9to5sports.com. They're available for $10 a month. Thank you guys for watching. Let's have a good slate. And as always, let's keep catching.